My 9-year-old daughter, Penny, stood at the microphone holding an envelope her father had given her before he died. Dad said to read this if anyone disrespected Mom, she announced, staring directly at my ex-mother-in-law, Nadine, and my former best friend, Bridget. The champagne glass in Nadine's hand started trembling, and that's when I knew Trevor had planned something from beyond the grave. Let me back up for just a second because you need to understand who these people are. I'm Rachel, 38 years old, and I've been raising my daughter alone for the past 5 years while running a wedding planning business that my ex-mother-in-law tried to destroy. The elderly woman currently glaring at my daughter is Nadine, who owns half of Charleston's real estate and never forgave me for marrying her precious son Trevor without her permission. Standing beside her, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else, is Bridget, who used to be my best friend until she started spreading rumors that I'd murdered my husband for insurance money. My son Colton, the one getting married tomorrow, had just turned 22. He was standing now, his face flushed with anger, as his little sister held that envelope like a weapon. His fiancée Waverly gripped his hand, her perfect French manicure digging into his palm. The entire Riverside Country Club dining room, filled with about 70 guests, had gone completely silent except for the sound of ice settling in water glasses. "Penny, sweetheart, what are you doing?" I called out. But my daughter had already started unfolding the paper inside the envelope. "Grandma Nadine just said our family isn't real because Mom is single," Penny said into the microphone, her voice carrying across the crystal and candlelight. "She said Mom couldn't keep Dad happy. She said Mom cared more about her business than being a good wife, and Miss Bridget said Mom might have killed Dad for money." Waverly's mother gasped. Her father pushed back his chair. My brother Dustin muttered something under his breath that definitely wasn't appropriate for a 9-year-old's ears. "But my dad knew this would happen," Penny continued. "He told me exactly what to do. He said there were 2 people in this room who would try to hurt Mom after he was gone, and he wrote their names right here on this paper." The thing about Trevor was that he'd been a corporate lawyer for 15 years before the cancer took him. He documented everything, recorded everything, and trusted almost no one completely except for me and our children. Even dying in that hospital bed, barely able to stay awake from the morphine, he was still protecting us, still thinking 3 moves ahead like he was playing chess with death itself. "Should I read it, Mom?" Penny asked, looking at me with those huge brown eyes that were exactly like her father's. Before I could answer, Nadine stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. "This is absolutely ridiculous. You're going to let a child disrupt this beautiful evening with some fabricated letter? Trevor would never write such a thing. He confided in me about everything, especially about how unhappy he was in those final years." "That's a lie," Colton said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Dad was happy. He loved Mom. He loved all of us." "Oh, you poor, naive boy," Nadine said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Your father was planning to leave your mother. He told me so himself. The only reason he stayed was because of you children." That's when Bridget decided to add her poison to the mix. "It's true, Colton. Your dad was miserable. He used to come to my house just to escape. He said Rachel was suffocating him with her constant need for attention, always wanting him to leave work early for family dinners, always complaining about his mother visiting." I watched my son's face crumble, watched Waverly's family exchange uncomfortable glances, watched my own father's hands clench into fists on the white tablecloth. This was supposed to be a celebration of new beginnings, and instead it had become a public execution of my character, my marriage, and my memories. "Read it, Penny," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Read every word." Because here's the truth about that night at the rehearsal dinner. I knew what was in that envelope. Trevor had told me he was leaving letters for both children just in case. He said he knew his mother and Bridget would come after me once he was gone, and he wanted to make sure the kids had ammunition to fight back. I just never imagined my 9-year-old would have to use it at her brother's rehearsal dinner in front of everyone we knew, with Nadine's society friends recording everything on their phones. "My dad's letter starts like this," Penny said, adjusting the microphone down to her height. "Dear Penny, if you're reading this, it means someone is trying to hurt your mother, and I'm not there to protect her anymore." The room held its breath. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, standing frozen with their serving trays. This was the moment everything changed, the moment Trevor reached out from beyond the grave to protect the family he'd loved more than anything, including his own mother's approval. I never imagined I'd be sitting at my son Colton's rehearsal dinner as the only single parent in a room full of perfect couples. 5 years had passed since my husband Trevor died in a car accident, leaving me to raise Penny alone while Colton was already in college. The Riverside Country Club sparkled with fairy lights and white roses, everything Colton's fiancé Waverly had dreamed of since she was a little girl. The April evening was warm enough to have the French doors open, letting in the smell of magnolias and the sound of crickets from the golf course. "Mom, you okay?" Colton squeezed my shoulder as guests filled their champagne glasses. He looked so handsome in his navy suit, the one we'd picked out together last month at the same shop where Trevor had bought his suits. "Never better, sweetheart," I replied, adjusting Penny's hair ribbon. She'd insisted on wearing the same purple dress she'd worn to her spring recital, the one where she'd played Mozart and forgotten the middle section but kept going anyway, making up her own melody that somehow sounded even better. The room buzzed with Waverly's family from Connecticut, all old money and perfect manners. Her mother wore pearls that had been in their family for 4 generations. Her father owned 3 yacht clubs and had already offered to sponsor Colton's application to the Hartford Business Club. They were lovely people, genuinely warm despite their wealth, and they'd welcomed me with open arms from the moment Colton had introduced us. My side of the room was smaller, but no less loving. My brother Dustin had driven down from Richmond with his partner Antonio, both of them already slightly tipsy from the cocktail hour. My father Raymond sat next to them, wearing the same suit he'd worn to my wedding 23 years ago, still fitting him perfectly because he walked 5 miles every morning, rain or shine. A handful of cousins filled out our tables, along with my friend Melanie, who'd stood by me through everything. "Penny, stop fidgeting with your pocket," I whispered as she kept touching something inside her dress. "I'm just making sure it's still there," she whispered back. "Making sure what's still there?" Before she could answer, Nadine swept into the room like she was walking a red carpet. She wore a black evening gown that probably cost more than my car, diamonds dripping from her ears and neck like frozen waterfalls. Her silver hair was styled in a perfect chignon that hadn't moved despite the humidity. She commanded attention the way she always had, the way that had made Trevor spend most of his childhood trying to earn her approval and most of his adulthood trying to escape it. "There's my grandson," she announced, embracing Colton stiffly, careful not to smudge her lipstick. She turned to Waverly with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And the beautiful bride. Dear, you must tell me where you found that dress. It's almost as lovely as the one I'd picked out for Trevor's first engagement." Colton's jaw tightened. Trevor's first engagement had been to Nadine's best friend's daughter, an arrangement he'd broken off when he met me at a charity event where I was coordinating the catering. Nadine had never forgiven me for that, or for the fact that Trevor had chosen happiness over her social expectations. "Mrs. Morrison," Waverly said carefully, because she'd learned quickly that Nadine hated being called grandma by anyone except blood relatives. "How nice that you could make it." "Well, someone has to represent Trevor's memory properly," Nadine said, her gaze sliding to me with practiced disdain. "Some of us understand the importance of family legacy." I focused on my breathing, the way my therapist had taught me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. I'd gotten good at managing Nadine's barbs over the years, but tonight felt different. There was something predatory in her movements, like a cat who'd already caught the mouse, but wanted to play with it first. The dinner bell rang and we all took our seats. The seating chart had been a nightmare to arrange, trying to keep Nadine far enough from me to prevent bloodshed but close enough that it wouldn't look obvious. She ended up 3 tables away, holding court with Waverly's great-aunt and uncle, already telling them about her charitable foundation and her box seats at the symphony. That's when Bridget arrived, 40 minutes late as always, making an entrance in a red dress that was definitely too revealing for a rehearsal dinner. Her blonde hair was freshly highlighted, her tan spray perfect, her smile as fake as the designer bag she was carrying. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since I'd discovered she'd been calling Trevor's life insurance company, suggesting they investigate his death more thoroughly. "So sorry I'm late." she announced to no one in particular, sliding into her seat at a table with some of Waverly's cousins. Traffic was absolutely horrible. There was no traffic on a Thursday night in Charleston, but Bridget had never met a truth she couldn't improve with fiction. She caught my eye across the room and raised her champagne glass in a mock toast, that same smile she'd worn when she'd testified at the insurance hearing, suggesting that maybe I'd been having an affair, maybe I'd wanted Trevor gone, maybe the loving marriage everyone thought we had was just an elaborate performance. The truth was that Trevor and I had fought sometimes, like all couples do. We'd argued about money when the business was starting, about his mother's constant interference, about whether Penny should learn violin or piano. But we'd also slow danced in the kitchen while dinner burned, left each other notes in ridiculous places, and stayed up until 3 a.m, talking about everything and nothing. The truth was that I'd loved him with every cell in my body, and losing him had nearly killed me too. "Ladies and gentlemen," the club's event coordinator announced, "dinner is served." The dinner progressed smoothly through the first 2 courses. Waverly's father spoke beautifully about unity and love, sharing a story about how his parents had weathered 50 years of marriage by never going to bed angry. My brother Dustin made everyone laugh with his tale of teenage Colton trying to impress a girl by cooking dinner and nearly burning down my kitchen. Even Waverly's grandmother, 93 and sharp as a tack, stood up to welcome Colton to their family with genuine warmth that made my eyes water. Then Nadine stood, tapping her champagne glass with her massive emerald ring, the one Trevor's father had given her before he died. The sound cut through the pleasant chatter like a knife through silk. "I'd like to say something about family values," she began, her voice carrying that special tone she reserved for public humiliation disguised as concern. "Waverly, darling, you're entering a real family now. Not some broken situation held together by desperation and life insurance payouts." The room shifted uncomfortably. I saw Waverly's mother freeze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Colton's knuckles went white around his water glass. "You see," Nadine continued, walking slowly between the tables like she was giving a TED Talk, "a real family has 2 parents who honor their commitments. A real family doesn't start with a single mother who couldn't keep her husband happy enough to want to come home at night." "Nadine," my father Raymond warned, half standing from his chair. Antonio put a hand on his arm, but my father shook it off. "Oh, Raymond, please. We all know Trevor was miserable. He told me everything." She paused dramatically, making sure everyone was listening. How Rachel nagged him constantly about working late, how she prioritized her little party planning business over being a proper wife, how she spent more time with her spreadsheets than with her husband. My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd learned long ago that showing Nadine she'd hurt you only made her dig deeper. "That's not true," Colton said, starting to stand, but Waverly pulled him back down. "Isn't it?" Nadine asked, her penciled eyebrows rising. "Your father came to my house every Sunday for the last year of his life, just to escape. He'd sit in my library and tell me how trapped he felt, how he'd made a mistake marrying outside his social circle, how he wished he'd listened to me from the beginning." This was a lie so bold it took my breath away. Trevor had gone to his mother's house on Sundays, yes, but only because she'd threatened to write him out of the will if he didn't. He'd come home afterward exhausted and angry, needing 2 scotches and a long walk to shake off whatever poison she'd poured in his ears. And after he died, well, Nadine glanced meaningfully at Bridget. "Some of us know the truth about that insurance money. $2 million is quite a motivation, isn't it, Rachel?" Bridget stood up then, as if they'd rehearsed this. The investigator I spoke to said the brake lines were suspicious. There was evidence of tampering, but somehow the case was closed so quickly, almost like someone had connections in the police department. Waverly's family gasped collectively. Her uncle pulled out his phone, probably ready to call off the wedding. Her mother covered her mouth with both hands. "That's enough!" Dustin shouted, jumping to his feet. "You can't just come here and accuse my sister of murder." "I'm not accusing anyone of anything," Bridget said with practiced innocence. "I'm just saying that some of us find it convenient that Rachel inherited everything, the business insurance, the life insurance, the house, all of it, And then Trevor's death was ruled an accident so quickly, despite the mechanical report showing those brake lines were clean cut, not worn. Because there was no mechanical report saying that, I said quietly, but my voice carried. You made that up, Bridget. Just like you made up the affair you claimed I was having with my client Marcus. Just like you made up the story about finding suspicious searches on my computer. Just like you made up every single lie you've told since Trevor rejected your advances at our Christmas party 5 years ago. The room went silent. Bridget's face flushed red, then white. How dare you, she hissed. Trevor and I were friends. Just friends. Friends don't usually try to stick their tongues down each other's throats in the host's bedroom, I said calmly. Friends don't usually send explicit photos to married men. Friends don't usually threaten to destroy someone's marriage when they're rejected. Nadine's laugh was cold and sharp. Oh, Rachel, still making up stories to cover your own guilt. Trevor would never have rejected Bridget. She's everything you're not. Sophisticated, elegant, from a good family. She's a pharmaceutical sales rep from Toledo who changed her name from Brittany Miller to Bridget Morse because she thought it sounded fancier, I said. Her father isn't a senator. He sells insurance. Her mother isn't a concert pianist. She teaches middle school band. There's nothing wrong with any of that except that she's lied about every single detail of her life since she moved to Charleston. Bridget's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Several guests were now openly recording on their phones. None of that changes the fact that Trevor was miserable and you probably killed him for money, Nadine said, her composure finally cracking. You're nothing but a gold-digging nobody who trapped my son and then disposed of him when it was convenient. That's when Penny stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. My quiet, shy little girl who still slept with a nightlight walked straight to the microphone with the determination of someone about to change everything. Penny walked to the microphone with a grace that seemed impossible for a 9-year-old who still occasionally tripped over her own feet. She pulled the white envelope from her pocket, and I could see Trevor's handwriting across the front even from where I sat. The words were clear. For Penny. Open only if someone hurts Mom. Excuse me. Her small voice echoed through the speakers. The event coordinator moved to stop her, probably thinking a child had wandered up during the adult speeches, but Colton stood and shook his head sharply. The man backed away. My dad gave me this before he died, Penny announced, holding the envelope up so everyone could see it. He was sick for 3 months, but Grandma Nadine only visited once because she said hospitals were depressing and smelled like poor people. Nadine's face went from smug to shocked. That's ridiculous. Trevor wouldn't give a child such a thing. He gave it to me on a Tuesday, Penny continued, ignoring her grandmother completely. It was the day after the doctor said he only had 2 weeks left. Dad called me into his hospital room while Mom was getting coffee. He made me promise to keep this letter safe and only read it if someone tried to hurt Mom after he was gone. I remembered that Tuesday. I'd come back from the cafeteria to find Penny crying in Trevor's arms, him whispering something in her ear while stroking her hair. When I'd asked what was wrong, they'd both said it was nothing, just saying goodbye. I'd assumed it was just another heartbreaking moment in a series of heartbreaking moments, not realizing Trevor was still protecting us even as cancer ate away at his body. He said 2 people would try to hurt our family, Penny said, her voice getting stronger. He said they would tell lies about Mom and try to make people think bad things about her. He wrote their names right here on the envelope. She turned the envelope around. In Trevor's shaky handwriting, weakened by medications but still recognizable, were 2 names, Nadine Morrison and Bridget Morse. This is absurd, Bridget called out, but her voice wavered. Anyone could have written that. This is probably something Rachel created herself. Dad knew you'd say that, Penny said, looking directly at Bridget. That's why he had the nurse witness him writing it. Her name is Carmen Valdez, and she works at Charleston Memorial. She took a picture of Dad writing this letter and sent it to his lawyer. Colton moved to stand beside his sister, putting his hand on her shoulder. Read it, Pen. Read every word. But first, Penny said, I want everyone to know something. My dad loved my mom more than anything in the world. He used to wake up early just to make her coffee exactly how she liked it, with 2 sugars and just a tiny bit of cream. He'd leave notes in her lunch bag when she had big events. He'd dance with her in the kitchen when he thought we weren't watching, but we always were. My throat tightened. I'd found one of those notes just last week, tucked in an old purse I hadn't used since before he died. It had simply said, "You're amazing. Don't let anyone tell you different, especially not my mother." When Dad got sick, Penny continued, Mom slept in a chair at the hospital for 43 nights. She only left to take me to school and pick me up. She held his hand through every treatment. Even when the chemotherapy made him so mean, he said terrible things he didn't mean. She read him every single Harry Potter book out loud because the medications made it hard for him to focus on the words. Waverly was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Her mother handed her a tissue while glaring at Nadine with undisguised disgust. "Grandma, Nadine came once," Penny said, her child's voice cutting through the room like truth always does. She stayed for 10 minutes, complained about the smell, told Dad he looked terrible, and said Mom was probably already planning what to do with the insurance money. Dad asked her to leave and never come back. "That's a lie," Nadine protested. But several nurses from Charleston Memorial were in attendance as Waverly's cousins, and I saw them nodding, remembering. "Miss Bridget never came at all," Penny added, but she called Dad's phone 17 times asking if Mom was really there or if she was out with someone else. Dad blocked her number, but she kept calling from different phones. My father, Raymond, stood up slowly, his weathered face hard with anger. "Read the letter, sweetheart. Let Trevor speak for himself." Penny unfolded the paper carefully like it was made of gold instead of simple hospital stationery. "Dear Penny," she began, her voice clear and strong. "If you're reading this, it means someone is trying to hurt your mother, and I'm not there to protect her. So I need you to know the truth, and I need you to be brave enough to share it." She looked up at me then, those brown eyes so full of love and determination that my heart cracked wide open. "Don't worry, Mom. Dad made sure we'd be okay. He always did." Then she turned back to the microphone and continued reading, unaware that she was about to detonate every lie Nadine and Bridget had carefully constructed over the past 5 years. "First to my mother, Nadine Morrison," Penny read, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. "I know you've been stealing from the family trust for 15 years. I have copies of every forged document, every falsified investment report, and every fraudulent withdrawal in a safety deposit box at Bank of America, account number ending in 4782. You stole $300,000 from your own grandchildren's college funds, telling everyone the market had crashed when really you were funding your gambling addiction at the Atlanta casinos." Gasps erupted across the room. Nadine gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Waverly's father, who happened to be a federal prosecutor, pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. "You're lying!" Nadine shrieked, but her voice had lost its commanding tone. "This is defamation! I'll sue!" Penny kept reading, unmoved by her grandmother's outburst. "I never said anything because I kept hoping you'd change, kept hoping you'd become the mother I needed instead of the one I got. But if you're attacking Rachel now that I'm gone, everyone should know you're not the society queen you pretend to be. You're a thief who stole from babies, including $8,000 from Penny's college fund just last year while I was dying." "The records will prove everything," Colton said loudly. "Dad was a lawyer. He didn't make accusations without evidence." Penny continued. "Second, to Bridget Morse, formerly Brittany Miller of Toledo, Ohio. I know about your affair with my business partner, Jerome Hutchinson. I have hotel receipts, credit card statements, and security footage from the Marriott on King Street. But more importantly, I have recordings from my home security system of you coming to my house on December 15th, 2019, while Rachel was at her sister's funeral in Virginia." My head snapped up. My sister Caroline had died of a heart attack that winter, and I'd been gone for 4 days. Trevor had said Bridget stopped by to drop off a casserole. "You tried to seduce me while my wife was burying her sister," Penny read, and the room seemed to collectively hold its breath. "When I rejected you, you said, and I quote, 'I'll destroy your marriage. I'll make Rachel think you've been cheating. I'll ruin her business. I'll make sure everyone knows what a pathetic little housewife she is.'" End quote. The entire conversation was recorded on our nanny cam, which you didn't know we had installed in the living room. Bridget shot up from her chair, her face purple with rage. This is fabricated. He wanted me. He was obsessed with me. There's more about you, Penny said calmly, finding her place on the page. After I rejected you, you called my mother 43 times from different numbers. You sent emails to her clients claiming she was unprofessional. You posted reviews online saying her business was a scam. You even called Child Protective Services and made a false report saying she was neglecting Penny, which was investigated and dismissed. Several of my clients were in the room, and I saw the recognition dawning on their faces. They'd all received those emails but had dismissed them as crazy spam. Now for the truth about my death, Penny read, and the room went absolutely silent. I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer on March 2nd, 2020. I hid it for 2 weeks because I was trying to figure out how to tell my family, how to explain to my 9-year-old daughter that Daddy was going to die. On March 16th, I finally decided to tell them that night at dinner. But while driving home from work, I had a seizure from the brain metastases the doctors had just found that morning. I lost consciousness and hit a tree on Highway 17. I covered my mouth with both hands. He'd been coming home to tell us he'd been carrying that burden alone for 2 weeks. The brake lines were perfect. Penny continued reading. I have the real mechanical report from Toyota, not the fake one my mother and Bridget paid an unemployed mechanic named Dale Brennan $3,000 to create. Mr. Brennan's confession is also in the safety deposit box, along with the wire transfer records showing the payment from my mother's account. Waverly's father was now on a call, speaking quietly but urgently. I heard the words fraud and conspiracy and immediate investigation. Mom had nothing to do with my death except trying to save my life for 3 months while I fought cancer that had already won. Penny read, tears now streaming down her face but her voice never wavering. She held my hand through 16 rounds of chemotherapy that we paid for by mortgaging the house, not from insurance money that didn't come until 6 months after I died. She sang to me when the pain was so bad I wanted to die. She told me stories about our children's futures when I couldn't imagine surviving another hour. Colton was crying now too, along with half the room. Even some of Waverly's cousins who'd never met Trevor were wiping their eyes. To anyone listening to this letter, Penny read, know that Rachel Morrison is the love of my life, the best mother our children could have, and the strongest woman I've ever known. Anyone who says otherwise is not just lying to you. They're lying to themselves about what love really looks like. Penny looked up from the letter, directly at Nadine and Bridget. There's one more line. It says, Penny, tell them about the video. She pulled out her phone, surprisingly steady for a 9-year-old who'd just destroyed 2 women's lives with her father's words. Dad recorded a video message too. Should I play it? The answer came not from me, but from Waverly herself, who stood and said firmly, yes, play it. Everyone needs to hear this. Penny connected her phone to the venue's audio system with help from the event coordinator, who seemed as invested in this revelation as everyone else. Trevor's face appeared on the large screen typically used for wedding slideshows, gaunt from the cancer, but his eyes still sharp with determination. If you're watching this, Trevor's recorded voice filled the room, then my mother and Bridget have done exactly what I predicted they would do. Rachel, honey, I'm sorry you're dealing with this, but I knew they'd come after you once I was gone. The man on the screen was skeletal compared to the Trevor I'd married, but his voice remained strong. He'd recorded this 3 days before he died, propped up in bed with legal documents spread around him. Mom, he said, looking directly at the camera, I spent my whole life trying to earn your love, not realizing you aren't capable of giving it. You love money, status, and control. You never loved me, and you certainly never loved my family. The only reason I stayed in contact was to protect them from you. Now that protection falls to the law. Mr. Davidson at the FBI has copies of everything. He's waiting for you to make your move. Nadine stumbled backward, catching herself on a chair. 2 of Waverly's cousins, both lawyers, were frantically taking notes. Bridget, Trevor continued, you're sick. I don't mean that as an insult, but as a fact. The stalking, the lies, the obsession, it's all documented. Dr. Patricia Hoffman has your full psychological evaluation from when Jerome's wife filed the restraining order against you. Yeah, I know about that too. The video Trevor held up a manila folder. Everything is documented, notarized, and distributed to 5 different law firms. If anything happens to Rachel or my children, if their business is sabotaged, if their reputation is attacked, all of this goes public immediately. He paused, coughing, then looked directly at the camera with such intensity that several people shifted uncomfortably. But here's what I really want to say. Rachel, you saved me. Not from cancer, but from becoming like my mother, cold, calculating, and empty. You taught me that love isn't about bank accounts or country club memberships. It's about dancing in the kitchen to terrible music. It's about staying up all night with a sick kid. It's about choosing each other every single day, especially when it's hard. I was sobbing now, not caring who saw. Colton had moved to stand beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "Colton, Penny," Trevor said, his voice softening. "Take care of your mom, but know she doesn't need it. She's titanium disguised as silk. And remember, family isn't about blood or money or social standing. It's about showing up. Your mother showed up every single day of our marriage, and she'll show up every day for you. That's worth more than all of Grandma Nadine's stolen money combined." The video ended with Trevor blowing a kiss to the camera. "I love you all. Now go have a beautiful wedding and a beautiful life. Don't let the vultures steal your joy." The screen went dark. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Waverly's father stood and began slowly clapping. One by one, everyone joined in until the room thundered with applause. Not for the drama, but for Trevor's final act of love and protection. Nadine tried to leave quietly, but 2 security guards blocked her path. "Ma'am," one said, "the police are on their way. Mr. Blackstone called them." He nodded toward Waverly's father. "This is ridiculous," Nadine sputtered, but her society friends were already backing away from her, their faces masks of disgust and shock. Bridget had disappeared, probably fleeing when she realized the legal implications of what had been revealed. We'd later learn she'd moved back to Toledo within a week, her fake life in Charleston completely destroyed. Waverly walked over to me, her makeup ruined but her smile radiant. "Mrs. Morrison, Rachel, I want you to know something. This doesn't change anything except to make me prouder to join your family. You've raised an incredible son, and Penny is extraordinary." "Thank you," I whispered, hugging her tightly. My father, Raymond, appeared at my elbow, his eyes twinkling. "Trevor always was smarter than he looked," he said. "Knew exactly what those harpies would do, set a trap from his deathbed and caught them red-handed." The rest of the evening became a celebration of truth rather than a rehearsal dinner, tainted by lies. Guests approached me one by one, sharing their own stories of Trevor's kindness, their admiration for how I'd handled everything, their disgust at Nadine and Bridget's behavior. "Mom," Penny said, tugging on my dress as the evening wound down, "I have something else for you." She pulled out a second envelope, this one marked, "For Rachel," after the first letter. Inside, Trevor's handwriting simply said, "Stop doubting yourself. You were always enough. Actually, you were everything. P.S. Check the safety deposit box. I left you something besides evidence. I love you beyond the stars and back. Forever. T." The next day, Colton's wedding was perfect. Nadine's absence was noticed but not mourned. She was being questioned by federal investigators about embezzlement charges. When the officiant asked who gave this man to be married, Penny and I said together, "His family does." Standing there, watching my son marry the woman he loved, with my daughter beside me and Trevor's presence somehow filling the space around us, I realized something profound. Love doesn't end with death. It transforms into something else. Protection, legacy, truth that outlasts lies, and stories that bind families together stronger than any blood or law ever could. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, loving deeply, and letting the truth speak for itself, even if that truth has to wait 5 years and come from the mouth of a 9-year-old girl brave enough to stand up to bullies, whether they're strangers or blood relatives. Trevor had given us one final gift. Not just justice, but freedom from ever having to defend our love again. The truth had set us free, delivered in a child's voice, powered by a father's love, and witnessed by everyone who mattered. As Colton and Waverly danced their first dance, Penny looked up at me. "Mom, do you think Dad can see us?" I smoothed her hair, the same gesture Trevor had done 1,000 times. "I know he can, baby, and he's probably laughing at how his mother's mascara ran when the police showed up." She giggled, and in that moment, surrounded by real family and true friends, I felt Trevor's presence as clearly as if he were standing beside us, finally at peace, knowing his family was safe, loved, and free. If you enjoyed this story about truth triumphing over lies and a father's love protecting his family even from beyond, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that real love always wins. Have you ever had someone try to destroy your reputation with lies? How did the truth finally come out? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about families who refuse to be broken, love that transcends death, and the moment when victims become victors. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might just change your perspective on what family really means. Until next time, remember, sometimes the quietest voice in the room carries the most powerful truth.